Iran has fired new barrages targeting central Israel and its neighboring countries as it looks to avenge the Israeli killing of two of its top security officials.
The EU has set its sights on a landmark trade deal with Australia as Commission President Ursula von der Leyen prepares to visit Sydney and Canberra for a final round of talks.
The Confederation of African Football, CAF, have awarded Morocco a 3-0 win in this year's Africa Cup of Nations final, stripping Senegal of the title.
Iran has fired barrages of advanced multiple warhead missiles targeting Israel, killing 2 people, as it looks to avenge the deaths of 2 of its top security officials a day prior. Israel announced on Tuesday that overnight strikes on Tehran eliminated Ali Larijani, who headed the Supreme National Security Council, and Ghulam Reza Soleimani, chief of the all-volunteer besieged paramilitary unit.
In the past 24 hours, we knocked out 2 of the terrorist chieftains, the top terrorist chieftains of this tyranny. Our aircraft are hitting the terror operatives on the ground, in the crossroads, in the city squares.
Tehran also fired new attacks on neighboring countries in the early hours of Wednesday, targeting Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, and Iraq as they continue to draw the wider region into conflict. Meanwhile, Iran is maintaining its stranglehold over the Strait of Hormuz, a vital waterway from which a fifth of the world's oil and gas normally pass, which has been effectively closed for weeks. U.S. President Donald Trump has signaled a potential Washington exit from NATO after the defense alliance rejected his request for assistance in reopening the strait.
I'm disappointed in NATO that we spend trillions of dollars on NATO. Think of it, trillions over the years, many trillions of dollars. It's one of the reasons we have deficits and we help other countries. And when they don't help us, I mean, it's certainly something that we should think about. I don't need Congress for that decision. As you probably know, I can make that decision myself.
Israel renewed its offensive on Lebanon in what it claims are operations targeting Iran-backed Hezbollah positions. The death toll from the fighting at day 19 currently sits at 1,300 in Iran, 900 in Lebanon, 14 in Israel, as well as 13 U.S. service members.
About 90 ships, including oil tankers, have crossed the Strait of Hormuz since the start of the conflict with Iran. The country has exported more than 16 million barrels of oil since the beginning of March, according to maritime and trade data, despite the waterway being effectively closed and Iran claiming it will attack tankers attempting to cross. Many of the vessels were engaged in so-called dark transits, evading Western sanctions and oversight, and are likely to have links to Iran. More recently, vessels linked to India and Pakistan have also crossed the strait as governments step up negotiations. China remains the largest buyer. Oil prices rose above $100 a barrel in recent weeks, prompting U.S. President Donald Trump to urge allies and trading partners to send warships to reopen the route in a bid to bring prices down. The Strait of Hormuz is a key route for global oil and gas, carrying about 1/5 of the world's crude oil.
The EU has set its sights on a landmark trade deal with Australia as Commission President Ursula von der Leyen prepares to visit Sydney and Canberra for a final round of talks next week. The hard-fought agreement collapsed in 2023 due to a standoff over agriculture, with Canberra accusing Brussels of blocking market access for Australian meat exports. However, mounting global trade tensions and sweeping US tariffs have revived negotiations as the EU races to diversify its partners. The Commission knows that 83% of EU trade now takes place with countries beyond the United States, following recent deals with India, Mexico, and Indonesia. For Brussels, the deal is also a strategic move to secure critical raw materials, including lithium and cobalt, needed for the bloc's green energy transition. Beyond economy, the agreement carries significant geopolitical weight in the Indo-Pacific, where rivalry with China continues to intensify. Von der Leyen's visit marks the final stretch of a process designed to strengthen ties with a like-minded partner in one of the world's most dynamic economic regions.
This conflict.
EU lawmakers have scheduled a committee vote for Thursday in a bid to revive a stalled trade deal with the United States following months of resistance. The move aims to kickstart a process long delayed by fundamental disagreements over digital rules and health standards, as well as mounting tensions over Greenland and Iran. Initially struck last summer by Ursula von der Leyen and President Donald Trump, the deal imposes 15% US tariffs on EU goods, while Europe cuts its own duties to zero. Brussels originally marketed the lopsided deal as the best of negative scenarios. However, the agreement was thrown into disarray earlier this year after the US Supreme Court declared the president's initial tariffs illegal, adding fresh uncertainty to the terms. To reach a compromise, MEPs negotiated until the last minute to include a clause allowing the EU to suspend the deal if its territorial integrity is threatened, a direct response to previous US threats regarding Greenland. A sunset clause has also been added, meaning the agreement will expire in March 2028 unless it is explicitly renewed. While the European Commission is pushing for full approval by the end of the month, political groups remain divided, with some lawmakers calling for more time to debate the deal's impact.
Overall.
In an interview with Euronews, UN humanitarian chief Tom Fletcher said that the so-called Board of Peace, backed by US President Donald Trump, is not an alternative to the UN.
The White House, when I talked to them, are very clear that the Board of Peace is not an alternative to the UN. And certainly the other countries that have joined it have been absolutely categoric that this is not meant to replace the UN. We're still here.
Fletcher said that the humanitarian situation in the Middle East is worsening, highlighting conflicts from Sudan to Gaza and Lebanon, where delivering aid is becoming increasingly dangerous. With Israeli forces moving deeper into southern Lebanon, he warned that the country could soon be in a crisis comparable to Gaza.
I do fear that. And in fact, I fear that because that's what we're hearing from some Israeli ministers right now who are speaking in increasingly belligerent language about what they plan to do to Lebanon. One really interesting development in the last couple of weeks is that for the first time, the Lebanese government themselves are calling for direct negotiations with Israel, which hasn't happened in the past. And so there's potential here to reset the relationship in the region. But the path to that is through dialogue and diplomacy and not through more brutal violence.
Fletcher said tens of thousands of people have been displaced in Lebanon, describing the situation as very grim.
Argentina has formally withdrawn from the World Health Organization, WHO, 1 year after announcing its decision. According to Foreign Minister Pablo Cuerno, Argentina's withdrawal from the WHO is effective after the formal notification made on 17 March 2025 to the UN Secretary General. President Javier Milei and his team's dispute with the WHO aligns with US President Donald Trump's criticisms of and pending withdrawal from the international body, with the US administration criticizing the organization's mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic and other global health crises. The US administration handed in its formal withdrawal announcement in January. Despite the withdrawal, the government assured that it will, quote, continue to promote international cooperation in health through bilateral agreements and at regional levels. The announcement has provoked criticism from local experts who consider the measure an aberration from a health policy point of view. Senegal are no longer the champions of the last Africa Cup of Nations. In an unprecedented ruling on Monday, the Appeals Board of the Confederation of African Football, CAF, awarded a 3-0 win to Morocco, annulling the result of the final played on January 18. The chaotic final in Rabat had originally been won 1-0 by the Senegalese side after extra time, but that came after Senegal's players left the pitch in protest for nearly a quarter of an hour over a penalty given to Morocco. Deep into stoppage time of regular play, with the score being goalless, the referee awarded a penalty to the host, Morocco. In protest, Senegalese supporters stormed the pitch and the national team withdrew. Riots subsequently broke out in Rabat following the match. The initial ruling had upheld the result on the field while imposing fines exceeding $1 million and suspensions on players and officials from both teams. The Senegalese football team has said they will appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport.
ce qu'on voit, c'est vraiment l'union de la création de nouvelles roches, de création de la terre, et qui vient frapper l'océan, qui vient la caresser. On voit les deux qui fusionnent, quoi, vraiment. Là, on voit l'ébullition qui se crée là, juste sous nos yeux, avec cette vapeur qui se dégage. Enfin, c'est puissant, c'est mystique, c'est fabuleux.
On a de la chance puisque c'est un terrain assez difficile, arriver jusqu'ici, donc il faut vraiment le vouloir. Il faut être équipé, voilà, parce qu'il ne faut pas faire n'importe quoi, ça reste un volcan, ça peut être dangereux. Et chanceux, fasciné, parce que c'est un magnifique spectacle.
Le caractère un peu original de cette éruption, c'est qu'elle dure assez longtemps. On a eu des éruptions qui ont duré plus longtemps, hein, mais c'est quelque chose par rapport aux dernières éruptions qui est assez notable pour cette éruption et ce qui explique pourquoi on atteint finalement depuis cette nuit l'océan.